My name is Jiso, and I'm reading Master Dōgen's Shōbōgenzō. And we are halfway through chapter 30, Gyoji, Pure Conduct and Observance of Precepts, but we're now on part 2. The first patriarch in China came from the west to the eastern lands at the instruction of the venerable Prajnatara. For the 3 years of frosts and springs during that ocean voyage, how could the wind and snow have been the only miseries? Through how many formations of cloud and sea mist might the steep waves have surged? He was going to an unknown country. Ordinary beings who value their body and life could never conceive of such a journey. This must have been maintenance of the practice, realized solely for the great benevolent will to transmit the Dharma and save deluded emotional beings. It was so because the transmission of Dharma is Bodhidharma himself. It was so because the transmission of Dharma is the entire universe. It was so because the whole universe in 10 directions is the real state of truth. It was so because the whole universe in 10 directions is Bodhidharma himself. And it was so because the whole universe in 10 directions is the whole universe in 10 directions. What conditions surrounding this life are not a royal palace? And what royal palace is prevented from being a place to practice the truth? For these reasons, he came from the west like this, because the saving of deluded emotional beings is Bodhidharma himself. He was without alarm and doubt, and he was not afraid. Because saving deluded emotional beings is the entire universe, he was not alarmed and doubting, and he was without fear. He left his father's kingdom forever, made ready a great ship, crossed the southern seas, and arrived at the port of Koshu. There would have been a large crew and many monks to serve the master with towel and jug, but historians failed to record this. After the master landed, no one knew who he was. It was the 21st day of the 9th lunar month in the 8th year of the Futsu era, 527, during the Liang dynasty. The governor of Koshu district, who was called Shōgo, received the master displaying the proper courtesies of a host. He then duly wrote a letter notifying Emperor Bu, for Shōgo was assiduous in fulfilling his duties. When Emperor Bu read the missive, he was delighted, and he dispatched a messenger for an imperial edict inviting the master to visit him. It was then the first day of the 10th lunar month of that same year. When the first patriarch arrived at the city of Kinryo, present-day Jiangsu province in East China, and met with the Liang Emperor Bu, the Liang Emperor Bu asked him, "It would be impossible to list all the temples built, all the sutras copied, and all the monks delivered since I assumed the throne. What merit have I acquired?" The master said, "No merit at all." The emperor said, "Why is there no merit?" The master said, "These things are only the trivial effects of human beings and gods, and the cause of the superfluous. They are like shadows following the form. Though they exist, they are not the real thing." The emperor says, "What is true merit?" The master said, "Pure wisdom being subtly all-encompassing, the body being naturally empty and still. Virtue like this is not sought by the worldly." The emperor asks further, "What is the paramount truth among the sacred truths?" The master said, "It is that which is glaringly evident and without anything sacred." The emperor said, "Who is the person facing me?" The master said, "I do not know." The emperor did not understand. The master knew that the time was not right. So on the 19th day of the 10th lunar month, the master quietly left, travelling north up the Yangtze River. On the 23rd day of the 11th month of the same year, he arrived at Rakuyo. He accepted the makeshift accommodation of Shorinji Temple on Suzan Mountain, where he sat facing the wall in silence all day long. But the ruler of the Wei dynasty also was too inept to recognize the master, and he did not even know that this was cause for shame. The master was of the Kshatriya caste in southern India. He had been the crown prince of a great nation. He had long ago acquired familiarity with the ways of a royal palace in a great nation. In the vulgar customs of a small country, there were habits and views that might be shameful to the prince of a great nation. But the mind of the first patriarch was not moved. He did not abandon the country, and he did not abandon the people. At that time, he neither prevented nor hated the slander of Bodhirusi, and the evil mind of the Precepts teacher Kozu he considered neither worthy of resentment nor even worth noticing. Despite the master's abundance of such virtue, people of the eastern lands considered him the equal of mere ordinary scholars of the Tripitaka and teachers of sutras and commentaries. This was extremely stupid. They thought so because they were trivial people. Some thought that the master was proclaiming a peculiar lineage of the Dharma called the Zen sect, and that the sayings of other teachers, commentary teachers and the like, might amount to the same as the right Dharma of the first patriarch. They were vermin who disturbed and dirtied the Buddha Dharma. The first patriarch was the 28th rightful successor. The first patriarch was the 28th rightful successor from Shakyamuni Buddha. He left his father's great kingdom to rescue the living beings of eastern lands, whose shoulders could come up to his. If the first patriarch had not come from the west, how could the living beings of eastern lands have seen and heard the Buddha's right Dharma? They would only have worried in vain over the sands and stone, which are names and forms. Even those who have clothed themselves in fur and worn horns on their head in a remote and distant land like ours have now become able to hear our fill of the right Dharma. Now even peasants and ploughmen, old country folk and village children see and hear. It is totally due to the ancestral master's maintenance of the practice in crossing the seas that we have been saved. The natural climate of India was vastly superior to that of China, and there were also great differences in the rightness and wrongness of local customs. China was not a place to which a great saint who had received and retained the Dharma treasury would go, unless he were a man of great benevolence and great endurance. A suitable place of practice where the master might live did not exist, and the people who could know a person were few. So he hung his travelling staff at Suzan Mountain for a spell of 9 years. People called him the Brahmin who looks at the wall. Historians recorded his name in lists of those learning Zen meditation, but it was not so. The right Dharma eye treasury transmitted from Buddha to Buddha and from rightful successor to rightful successor was simply the ancestral master alone. Sekimon's Rinkan Roku says, Bodhidharma first went from the land of the Liang dynasty to the land of the Wei dynasty. He passed along the foot of Suzan Mountain and rested his staff at Shorin Temple. He just sat in stillness facing the wall, and only that. He was not practicing Zen meditation. For a long time no one could understand the reason for that sitting, and so they saw Bodhidharma as training in Zen meditation. Now the practice of dhyana is only one among many forms of conduct. How could it be all there was to the saint? Yet because of this practice, the people of that time who made chronicles subsequently listed him among those who were learning Zen meditation. They grouped him alongside people like withered trees and dead ash. Nevertheless, the saint did not stop at the practice of dhyana, And at the same time, of course, he did not go against the practice of dhyana, just as the art of divination emerges from yin and yang without going against yin and yang. When the Liang Emperor Bu first met Bodhidharma, he asked at once, "What is the paramount sacred truth?" The master replied, "It is that which is glaringly evident and without anything sacred." The emperor went on to say, "Who is the person facing me?" Then the master said, "I do not know." If Bodhidharma had not been conversant with the language of that region, how could their conversation have taken place as it did at that time? Thus it is evident that the master went from the Liang kingdom to the Wei kingdom. He passed along Suzan mountain and rested his staff at Shorin temple. He sat in stillness facing the wall, but he was not learning Zen meditation. Though he had not fetched with him a single sutra or text, he was the true authority who had brought with him the transmission of the right Dharma. Chroniclers, however, not being clear, listed him in sections about learning Zen meditation. This was extremely stupid and regrettable. While the master thus continued practicing on Suzan mountain, there were dogs who barked at the great ancestor. They were pitiful and extremely stupid. How could any who has a heart think light of the master's merciful kindness? How could any who has a heart not hope to repay this kindness? There are many people who do not forget even worldly kindness, but appreciate it deeply. These are called human beings. Did I say that right? There are many people who do not forget even worldly kindness. The great kindness of the ancestral master is greater even than the kindness of a father or mother. So do not compare the benevolent love of the ancestral master even with the love of a parent for a child. When we consider our own lowly position, we might be alarmed and afraid. We are beyond sight of the civilized lands. We are not born at the center of civilization. We do not know any saints. We have not seen any sages. No person among us has ever ascended beyond the celestial world. People's minds are utterly stupid. Since the inception of Japan, no person has edified the common people. We hear of no period when the nation was purified. This is because no one knows what is pure and what is impure. We are like this because we are ignorant of the substance and details of the two spheres of power and the three elements. How much less could we know the rising and falling of the five elements? This stupidity rests upon blindness to the phenomena before our very eyes. And we are blind because we do not know the sutras and texts, and because there is no teacher of the sutras and texts. There is no teacher means that no one knows how many tens of volumes there are in this sutra. No one knows how many hundreds of verses and how many thousands of sayings there are in this sutra. We read only the explanatory aspect of the sentences, not knowing the thousands of verses and tens of thousands of sayings. Once we know the ancient sutras and read the ancient texts, then we have the will to venerate the ancients. When we have the will to venerate the ancient sutras come to the present and manifest themselves before us. The founder of the Han dynasty and founder of the Wei dynasty were emperors who clarified the verses spoken by astrological phenomena and who interpreted the sayings of geological forms. When we clarify such sutras as these, we have gleaned some clarification of the three elements. The common folk of Japan, never having been subjected to the rule of such noble rulers, do not know what it is to learn to serve a ruler or what it is to learn to serve a parent, and so we are pitiful even as subjects of a sovereign and pitiful even as members of a family. As retainers or as children, we vainly pass by valuable one-foot gems and vainly pass by invaluable minutes of time. There is no Japanese person who, having been born into an ancestry like this, would give up an important national office. We even cling to trivial official positions. This is how it is in a corrupt age. In an age of purity, such things might be rarely seen or heard. Living in a remote land like this and possessing lowly bodies and lives like these, if we had the opportunity to hear our fill of the Tathagata's right Dharma, how could we have any hesitation but losing those lowly bodies and lives on the way? Having clung to them, for what purpose could we relinquish them later? Even if our bodies and lives were weighty and wise, we should not begrudge them to the Dharma. How much less should we begrudge bodies and lives that are lowly and mean? Lowly and mean though they are, lowly and mean though they are, when we ungrudgingly relinquish them for the truth and for the Dharma, they may be more noble than the highest gods and more noble than the wheel-rolling kings. In sum, they may be more noble than all celestial gods and earthly deities and all living beings of the triple world. The first patriarch, however, was the third son of the king of Koshi in South India. He was, to begin with, an offspring of the imperial lineage of India, a crown prince. His nobility and venerability were such that people in a remote nation in the eastern lands never knew even the forms of behaviour by which they should serve him. There was no incense, there were no flowers, his seat and mat were scant, the temple buildings were inadequate. How much worse it would have been in our country, a remote island of sheer cliffs. How could we know the forms by which to revere the prince of a great nation? Even if we imitated them, they would be too intricate for us to understand. There might be different forms for lords and for the emperor, and courtesies large and small, but we would not be able to tell the difference. When we do not know how high or low we are, we do not maintain and rely upon the self. When we are not maintaining and relying upon the self, the most important thing to clarify is how high or low we are. Okay, I'll carry that on tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Take care.